Tacos. Few street foods have traveled as far or landed as hard as the taco. Originating in Mexico, the taco is at its core a simple thing, a folded or rolled tortilla wrapped around a filling. But that simplicity is exactly what makes it so powerful. Street versions are nothing like the crunchy shells sold in fast food chains. A proper street taco uses a small corn tortilla, doubled up to hold the weight, topped with grilled meat, raw onion, cilantro, and a squeeze of lime. The meat changes by region. Al pastor is marinated pork shaved from a vertical spit, borrowing technique from Lebanese immigrants who brought shawarma to Mexico in the early 20th century. That kind of quiet cultural layering is what makes the taco so much deeper than it first appears. Pad Thai. Thailand's most recognized street dish has a surprisingly recent origin. It was actively promoted by the Thai government in the 1930s and 40s as part of a nationalist campaign to reduce rice consumption and unify the country around a single national dish. The result was a stir-fried noodle dish made with rice noodles, egg, tofu or shrimp, bean sprouts, and tamarind paste, finished with crushed peanuts and lime. Street vendors cook it in blazing hot woks over open flame, and the whole process takes under 2 minutes. The smoky, slightly charred flavor that comes from that heat is called wok hei, and it is almost impossible to replicate at home. Samosa. The samosa is one of the oldest and most widely traveled street foods in existence. Its origins trace back to Central Asia, and it spread through trade routes into the Middle East, South Asia, and eventually East Africa. In India, where it became most deeply rooted, a samosa is a fried pastry shell filled with spiced potatoes, peas, and sometimes meat. The outside is crisp and golden. The inside is soft, warm, and heavily seasoned with cumin, coriander, and green chili. It is sold for almost nothing from roadside carts and eaten at any hour of the day. Paired with tamarind chutney or mint sauce, it becomes something genuinely hard to put down.
Bánh Mì. Vietnam produced one of the great culinary collisions in modern history when French baguettes met Vietnamese ingredients during the colonial period. The bánh mì is the result. A light, airy baguette, crispier and less dense than its French counterpart, is split open and packed with a combination of ingredients that vary by vendor, but typically include pâté, pork or grilled meat, pickled daikon and carrot, cucumber, jalapeno, and fresh cilantro. Sweet, sour, salty, and spicy all at once. It became one of the defining street foods of Vietnamese cities and has since spread to Vietnamese communities all over the world, usually improving every neighborhood it enters. Churros. The churros' exact origin is disputed between Spain and Portugal, with some historians suggesting it may have been influenced by a similar Chinese fried dough called yutao, brought by Portuguese traders. What is certain is that it became deeply embedded in Spanish and Latin American culture. A churro is a long, ridged stick of fried dough, dusted in cinnamon sugar and served with a thick cup of hot chocolate for dipping. In Mexico and much of Latin America, the street versions are often filled with cajeta, chocolate, or cream. Simple to make, deeply satisfying, and the kind of food that feels like a reward rather than a snack. Jerk chicken. Jamaica gave the world jerk, and the world has been grateful ever since. Jerk is both a spice blend and a cooking method, and neither works without the other. The meat, traditionally chicken or pork, is marinated in a paste of Scotch bonnet peppers, allspice, thyme, garlic, and several other spices, then slow-cooked over pimento wood. The wood is not optional. It gives jerk chicken a specific smoky, aromatic quality that other woods simply do not replicate. The tradition has roots in the Maroon communities of Jamaica, descendants of escaped enslaved people who developed the technique in the mountains. Street stalls across Kingston and beyond still cook it the same way, over fire, low and slow, wrapped in foil until the meat falls apart.
Falafel. Made from ground chickpeas or fava beans mixed with herbs and spices, then deep fried into dense golden balls, falafel has been feeding people across the Middle East for centuries. Egypt is generally considered its birthplace, where it is made with fava beans and called tamia, while the Levantine version, more commonly known globally, uses chickpeas. Street vendors stuff it into flatbread with tomatoes, pickled vegetables, and tahini sauce. It is filling, cheap, vegetarian without trying to be, and available at almost any hour in cities like Beirut, Tel Aviv,
Cairo, and increasingly everywhere else. Its spread across Europe and North America has been steady and shows no sign of slowing. Takoyaki. Osaka has a fierce pride in its food culture, and takoyaki sits at the center of it. These are round balls of batter, cooked in a specially molded iron pan, each one containing a piece of octopus inside. The outside becomes slightly crisp, while the inside stays soft and almost molten. They are finished with a drizzle of takoyaki sauce, which is thick and savory, Japanese mayonnaise, dried bonito flakes that wave in the heat like tiny flags, and a dusting of dried seaweed. The whole thing is served in a tray and eaten with toothpicks. They are dangerously hot in the center, which is somehow part of the experience. Osaka street food culture treats eating as performance, and takoyaki fits that spirit perfectly. Arepas. In Colombia and Venezuela, the arepa is not street food in a casual sense. It is foundational. Made from ground maize dough, shaped into thick rounds, and cooked on a griddle or fried, the arepa has been eaten across northern South America for thousands of years, long before either country existed as a nation. The fillings and toppings differ sharply between the two countries. Venezuelan arepas are typically split open and stuffed generously, with cheese, black beans, shredded beef, or avocado. Colombian versions tend to be thinner and served alongside meals rather than stuffed. Street vendors sell them fresh and hot at all hours, and they represent one of those rare foods that is simultaneously everyday and irreplaceable.
Currywurst. Berlin is a city with a complicated history, and its most beloved street food reflects a very specific moment in that history. Currywurst was invented in 1949 by a woman named Herta Heiwer, who reportedly obtained ketchup and curry powder from British soldiers and combined them into a sauce poured over a sliced, steamed pork sausage. The city was still in ruins, and this cheap, hot, filling food became part of post-war daily life almost immediately. Berlin now has a museum dedicated to it. The sausage is sliced into rounds, covered in the tomato curry sauce, and served with a toothpick and a bread roll or fries. It is unpretentious by design, and that is the whole point. Pani Puri. India's street food scene is enormous and wildly varied, but few things produce the reaction that Pani Puri does in the people who grew up eating it. A Pani Puri is a hollow, crisp sphere of fried dough, small enough to fit in one bite, filled with a mixture of spiced mashed potato or chickpeas, then dunked in cold, tangy, spiced water made from tamarind, mint, and green chili. The entire thing has to go into the mouth at once, and when it does, it explodes. The experience of eating it is almost impossible to describe to someone who has not had it. It goes by different names in different regions, Golgappa in the north, Fuchka in Bengal, and each version has its own devotees who will argue their version is the correct one. Elote. Mexican street corn, known as elote, is a masterclass in taking something simple and making it extraordinary. An ear of corn is grilled until charred in places, then coated in a layer of mayonnaise or crema, rolled in crumbled cotija cheese, dusted with chili powder, and finished with a squeeze of lime. Every element adds something. The smokiness from the grill, the richness of the mayo, the salt of the cheese, the heat of the chili, the brightness of the lime. It is sold from carts all over Mexico and has spread rapidly through the United States, where it now appears at food festivals, night markets, and street corners far from its origin. The cup version, called esquites, is the same ingredient served off the cob in a cup with a spoon for people who prefer their street food slightly less chaotic.